Oh shit, here we go again.
Low, low, man. Low, low, man.
You like contracts, right? You're a contract guy.
I read contracts instead of conventional pornography, yeah.
Slippery little bastard! Making the mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't spread over every egg.
Hello, what up, nerds?
What's going on, guys? It's Andrew Esquire, and this is the Legal Minds who teach you to be your own judge. We're not scuffed today, baby. We're doing it live from Bangkok, Thailand. No scuff. I know, it's great. It's great. People in the chat before I started were taking bets. It was very degenerate on how late I was going to be and whether or not my mic would be scuffed. And I feel like that's got to be the pre-launch poll is like, will Andrew scuff this stream today? Like, and we just take bets. But thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you all coming here today, obviously. And thank you for, as always, supporting my channel, being here and, hanging out. It's been absolutely awesome to have this experience, to be able to be on this channel and to hang out with you guys. Really, honestly, it's one of the best parts about this is to be able to hang out with the chat, even when you guys are busting my balls. King Lugia coming in here with 5 Legal Mindset memberships. Thank you very much. Yes. And Vivan Raj dropping a RPG membership. So thank you for that. Appreciate that, Vivan. Now, today, what I wanted to talk about was actually just some Florida laws that I'm very familiar with myself. And I think in light of Hurricane Milton, a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of people were streaming on it, even people that are outside of Florida or have never lived through a hurricane. I want to talk about 3 areas of law. And we're gonna give a general overview. Obviously, if there's one of them that people are really deeply interested in, or it becomes a topic later, I can do a deep dive. But I just wanted to give a general overview of at least 3 areas of law that kind of help before, during, and after a hurricane, right? So there's 3 different areas of law I want to cover today related to hurricane law and kind of go over that. And there are kind of specific to Florida. So obviously hurricanes hit a lot of different states. They hit any of the Gulf states. So from Texas to Florida, and then all the way up to New York, can have a hurricane. It's very possible for hurricanes to hit up there. The Long Island hurricane, very famous hurricane back in the day. And obviously you guys remember Sandy, obviously that can hit there. So different states have different laws. So for those that are outside the US, I know this is really confusing for you, but there are different state laws. Now, there are some federal laws we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite FEMA. And we'll get into FEMA, right? Which people are not very happy with right now. But that is another element that is national, but a lot of what FEMA does is, or rather a lot of emergency management is on the state level, just so understand that as we go over things today. So we're going to get into it. We'll do a little bit of, now this is not like the Weather Channel, so I'm not going to go through every single live cam and everything else like some other channels might. I know there's some channels that are out there just watching the weather cameras, which is cool. I mean, I've got a couple of those pulled up right now, just in one stream. Let's see where I found that. Yeah, right here. So like, here's the current status. And as you can see, it's already moved offshore. We'll get into the exact position. So when you look at the live stream right now, this is Key West, and you've already got a guy posing in front of the southernmost point buoy. So at the point at which there you got some, joker out here posing, and then you've got the car driving by leisurely, it's clearly passed from affecting the keys. But then again, you have footage from around the Tampa area. That's over here on the bottom right. And I believe this is Daytona Beach, right? You've got other stuff. So you've got other areas that still have a lot of water backed up and also have some wind. But clearly it was a lot worse earlier in the hurricane when it made impact. It made impact as a Category 3 hurricane. For those that don't know, hurricanes are categorized by their wind strength, and that's going to come into effect when it comes to the laws, because we're going to talk about some laws that were adjusted based on wind strength. So keep in mind, this is very relevant when we talk about the laws, that Hurricane Milton made landfall at 120 miles an hour as a Category 3 around Siesta Key, right? I've been to Siesta Key. It's actually quite nice. Florida. And that's in the Tampa Bay area, so the general Tampa Bay area. And it came in from the Gulf of Mexico. And now it is crossed, and we'll show its current position, right? It has now crossed over and is now on the Atlantic side. So it's now on the Atlantic side, still got winds of 75 knots, so it's still a hurricane. It's got a central pressure of 980 millibars, and it's moving east-northeast at 18 knots. So the thing with these hurricanes is once they hit the Atlantic, obviously there's a possibility for double dip. There's a possibility for these things to go around. And then we've also got a hurricane out here, sitting out here, Hurricane Leslie, that's over here. And we've got some tropical disturbance, right? So this is the NHC's site, right? They track a bunch of different hurricanes. And of course, this is Atlantic tropical hurricanes. If you were going to go over to my side, more close to my side of the world, you can go over here to Pacific. Let's see what's gone in the Pacific. We're clear in the Pacific. And then Central Pacific, right, which is more Hawaii, which is the closest to my side of the world. But obviously, if it's really in the Pacific, i.e. over here by Japan, it is referred to as a typhoon. There is no real difference in the way that they operate other than the direction and the naming. That's about it. But that's where we're at right now. So currently it's passed over. If you see the assessment here, this is the latest assessment as of 5 a.m. EDT, which is Eastern time. Key messages for Hurricane Milton. There's danger of life-threatening storm surge along the coast from east central Florida northward to southern Georgia. So this is not the time to go surfing. A lot of people end up getting killed because they go doing dumbass shit like surfing or trying to get in the water or whatever when it's still got extreme storm surge. So yeah, don't do that. Damaging hurricane force winds, especially gusts, will continue for a few more hours in east central and northeastern Florida. Residents are urged to remain in an interior room and away from the windows. Heavy rainfall across the central and northern Florida peninsula through this morning continues to bring the risk of considerable flash and urban flooding along moderate to major river flooding, especially in areas where coastal and inland flooding combine to increase the overall flood threat. One of the biggest ironies of hurricanes, and it's a scary thing, but some of the most beautiful days I've ever seen in my life are before and after a hurricane, because you get this before the bands start rolling in. You get some of the most beautiful sunsets. You get some of the most clear days, pristine days. And then afterwards, when it goes, it's eerie how it goes from just this hellish nightmare of wind. And, if you've got a house, maybe there's a tree and you hear something like slamming against your door or your roof or your window, etc. So you hear just noises all night, the howling of the wind and the rain, beating against the house. And then all of a sudden it just stops and it's just a super calm, beautiful day. It's a really weird thing, like walking around before and after, right? It almost is like a bomb hit afterwards. You look around and you're like, who dropped the bomb? It literally feels that way. And of course, for those who don't know, sorry, and let me repeat my lore here, because in case you guys don't know, I was born in Miami, Florida. I lived there for about 22 years that I was consistently in Miami. So I was there for Hurricane Andrew, and I'm going to show a little footage of the damage from Hurricane Andrew, lest we forget, years ago, and actually the genesis of a lot of the changes in Florida law, which accommodated 4 hurricanes. A lot of these laws in Florida did not exist before Hurricane Andrew, which is why it changed that law. So I lived through that. I had the pleasure of seeing the hurricane fling a palm tree down my street, and it was flying in the correct direction in the correct lane, which was very, very polite of the palm tree to fly correctly. But of course, my mother pulled me away from the window and gave me a stern warning there after I viewed that. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience. And of course, I've lived through several other hurricanes in Central Florida, right? So I was in Orlando as well. I actually had a funny story where I moved. I evacuated, from Miami to Orlando, only to be hit by the hurricane as it swerved and hit Orlando. That was actually very funny. And I've experienced some others also when I was in North Carolina. And I know there was a super chat here which says, "Do not forget about us in North Carolina." Where is that? Where is that? Yes, Spooky Trooper. I don't forget about you guys in North Carolina and the flooding there. And once again, I also lived in that area of North Carolina, right? I said like near Waynesville, North Carolina. And I am very aware of the issues with flooding and the damage up there. And we have not forgotten about the people there or FEMA's failures there either, right? Haven't forgotten about that. Obviously, the best thing to do is to keep yourself safe and be as prepared as possible, right? The best person to help you is yourself, right? And then followed by, people that you love and you trust around you. And real quick, let me get these and we'll get the memberships after. LJ O'Rourke says, FEMA. I learned during Sandy not to trust those fools. Yeah, that's a good time to learn. And we'll talk about the genesis of FEMA, where they come from, their authorizing statute, and, what they are doing, right, to help. Bologna Bong said, "I'm late and possibly gay." Well, no judgment for the gayness, but you are for the lateness. I'll do this one.
Disgusting.
Baron Rocher says, "Andrew is our great gator export to Asia." Yes, I'm the Florida gator over here in Asia. Actually, a friend of mine sent me a picture. A friend of mine was like, "Oh man, I found she's like, I found a girl who was like studying in the US. It's a Thai girl studying in the US. And she went to college." I'm like, "Oh, where'd you go to college?" And he sends me a picture with her, and she's in a Gators sweater. And I'm like, "Oh, she's from Florida. Run now. You won't be able to handle the Florida woman," because he's a Texas guy. It's like, you won't be able to handle a Florida woman. It's too much. No, but it's a good time. I support all my fellow Gators, both Floridians in general and graduates of the University of Florida, wherever you are in the world. Tatsumi said, "Insert joke about why hurricanes have female names here." Actually, there's a reason for that. Hold on. I've heard that actually explained. Okay. Why did they get named that way? To avoid arguments, it was decided to use women's names for storms because it would be less confusing for U.S. Air Force radio announcers to use something different to the phonetic alphabet to describe weather systems, as the phonetic alphabet would also be used for other military communications. So if we're talking about that, right? Yeah, that's the actual reason. That's the actual reason. Not, it was racist and sexist. It was personal preferences and vendettas. It was all somebody's girlfriend's name. Yeah. Shade Chaser said, "It's looking like Milton was a Cat 2 when it made landfall." It was a Cat 3 when it was on landfall. Let me just pull this up. Okay, so let me show you the scale first, because I didn't have the Saffir-Simpson scale. So for those that don't know, hurricanes are rated on the Saffir-Simpson scale. So the Saffir-Simpson scale is over here. It's a win scale. So here we go. Category 1 is 74 to 95 miles an hour, right? Very dangerous winds that can produce some damage. And yes, even a category 1, especially if you're on the coast, it can fuck you up. And especially if your house is poorly constructed, or it's a mobile home, or it is a stick built, as I like to call them, a fully wooden, and built in a poor way, ramshackle construction, it can get pretty wrecked by a Cat 1. Cat 2, which is between 96 and 110, is extremely dangerous winds. Francis was a category 4. Now, Katrina, ironically, was a category 1. And actually, funny story, I went to a hurricane party during Katrina because, at least in Miami, our houses are built to a certain standard. And we're going to talk about that. So Cat 1 hurricanes, we didn't take very seriously. We're like, that's a category 1. It's whatever, right? But, Katrina, when it hit Miami, it actually did more damage than I thought it would do. And I almost died that night while I was trying to drive home after Katrina had passed through. It was kind of crazy, actually. But category 2 could do some serious damage, as Francis. Category 3, Gene, Irma, and now Milton. And category 3 is 111 to 129, which is you're going to have devastation. It's going to hurt. Category 4 is catastrophic damage. Well-built buildings can have severe damage, even well-built buildings in category 4. And that's 130 to 156. And Cat 5 is Andrew and Katrina, obviously, when it hit in Louisiana. And that is 157 or higher. So a high percentage of framed homes will be destroyed. So that's the scale. So when we look at what was it, it hit 120 at the time of landing. It was not category 5. Now, I know a lot of people said, oh, it's mathematically so strong when it was over the Gulf, but I was kind of waiting for it to move, because the thing is, as it goes north, that water is not as warm and able to power it up in the same way. So typically, when they're coming in on that coast, they tend to weaken, and that's actually taken account for in the Florida building codes, which we're going to get to. That's one of the laws we're going to cover today, is Florida building codes. But to finish with your super chat, because I actually didn't read the whole thing. But what laws will come into play with the many massive tornadoes from its leading arms before landfall? Well, I mean, I don't know what laws could go, and that's actually a really good question. So, I mean, the tornadoes are something that other places are a little bit more well-built for, right? More well-prepared for. I think maybe with tornadoes, it may come down to training about tornadoes. I think the construction, I don't think we're going to change much in our building code or our laws. I think we're going to have training and maybe warning, right, regarding tornadoes. Although we do get warnings. I mean, when there is a tornado coming, and especially in Florida, I would always get blaring alarms on my phone that a tornado was coming. It was very, very, very obvious, right, to me when there's a tornado anywhere close. I don't know if you guys ever received those emergency warnings on your phone where it just screams. I got those during several storms in the U.S., including one hurricane that I was in, where there were several tornadoes, and I got multiple warnings. Right now, I would have been pretty screwed because I was actually in a condo that had all glass windows, but luckily they were impact windows. They were hurricane rated, so they were not broken or anything. But it was intense. It was intense, right? Let's see here. So I got that. Okay, I'll keep that one up. Keep the Saffir-Simpson up. All right. So obviously, let me show you a little bit of the damage here. And this is pretty consistent. Oh, actually, first of all, sorry. Let me get the member stuff. So JP Ravenfire for 5. Doug Diaz for 5. LJ O'Rourke for 5. Thank you, LJ, Doug Diaz, JP Ravenfire. Really appreciate that, guys. Please say thank you to JP, to Doug, and to LJ O'Rourke. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Not as in, I cannot absolve you. Mega based.
Dim the Lamp says, aren't all American houses made out of cardboard? No, actually. So in certain areas, especially with new construction, you are required to be rated to stand up to a certain amount of wind, right? So it's not all made out of cardboard necessarily. In fact, like for example, my house, I'll just give an example in Miami, is made out of concrete blocks with rebar, right? You know, so like steel bars in the middle, like reinforced steel bars in the middle, right? So it's kind of more resistant, right? To than just a piece of plywood, right? And this is a very good point from Daniel too. I went here. You can't feasibly tornado-proof a structure. Tornadoes are sort of natural wild card. Luckily, your odds of being hit by a tornado are actually low, even in Tornado Alley. Exactly. The best thing you can do is have the basement, right? Right, and you go down in the basement. But yeah, it's difficult to tornado-proof a structure. Cat 6 is not part of a scale method. There's no Cat 6. There's no Cat 6. That's not a thing. Let's see here. Bam Bam says, I'm on the East Coast, a little South Daytona. The hurricane wasn't bad here. Just kicked up several tornadoes, really did damage. Yeah, and that's a real problem. It's a real problem. And we do know about those. I mean, I know that especially the bands, those bands of the hurricane are wildly underestimated. A lot of people are like, oh, it's just bands. No, sometimes those bands contain tons of lightning, tornadoes, and some of the worst damage I've seen happens during a band, right? So a band of that hurricane will sweep through and just fuck shit up. And it's crazy. And one of the craziest things is being in that hurricane and looking up and seeing how fast it's moving, right? Because you can see the movement of the clouds and how fast they're moving. It's scary. It's really crazy. Shade Chaser said the wind speed records being reviewed show Milton's winds were not at Cat 3 levels, according to meteorologists I follow. That's what I mentioned. Oh, cool. Well, yeah, no, okay, well, good. Yeah, once again, I can only go by the official report for now, but we'll see. They'll go back and check the tape, I'm sure, in retrospect. Of course, there's official records versus unofficial records, right? So what someone may have measured one place may be inconsistent with another. So they'll go through and they'll reconcile those records, and they may revise it one way or another. That's true. And there's been times when storms have been revised up and revised down. So it's possible. It's possible. Yeah. But that's the information we had at the moment. Zin said, I got a buddy that lives right on the coast in Sarasota, not in the worst flood zones, but still right there, still waiting on word from him. Yeah, that I've got word from everybody that I know that they're fine, right? My friends in Orlando and my family there too, and everybody else is fine. Yeah, Leprechaun Gold Ear says for 20, I have PTSD from hurricanes getting better. Yeah, they're pretty rough. So everybody I know is fine. That's sad. Yeah, everybody's fine. Friends, family, everybody's safe. But that said, it's still very haunting even to go through it once, especially if you're there in a direct zone. And then you've got the eye of the storm, which a lot of people don't know about the eye. What can happen with the eye is you can think the storm is over, but the eye is this calm area in the storm. And people will walk outside. This actually happened during one of the hurricanes. I believe it was the Labor Day hurricane. And people walked out thinking it was over, and they were just in the eye. And immediately after the eye wall is actually the most insane area. So then all of a sudden, you're hit by the strongest winds, right? So it goes from totally calm to strongest winds. So that's why, after an intense hurricane, you're kind of iffy to walk out because you're like, is it over? Is this the eye? Right? You're looking around like, is this the eye? Are we in the eye right now? And it's back even stronger. So that actually is really, really crazy. Yeah, the eye is tranquil and peaceful. Yep. It's a little spot of paradise amongst hell. It's crazy. So here's some footage. Once again, I'm not going to be like playing a tons of footage. There's lots of other channels that do that, but I'm just going to play some dash cam footage that's showing the coast right before it made landfall. So some things you can notice here, the poles here are bent, right? Poles here are meant, always watch the palms. Now, one cool thing about palms is palm trees, at least the ones from Florida, are meant to bend. And the Caribbean ones are meant to bend so they do not break in the hurricanes. Whereas the Middle Eastern palms, other palms that are from non-hurricane areas, you'll see those fall over. So a lot of times people will import palms from other parts of the world to Florida because, well, they'll still grow, right? It's still a climate in which they can grow and they look pretty, but they're not hurricane resistant. So they fall over. And it's a massive problem because those palms end up blocking streets. They're like immediate roadblocks, which chainsaws need to be summoned forth for. But luckily, a lot of Florida men out there, shout out to Florida man, a lot of Florida men have chainsaws, so they're right at it real quick. Real question. This is a good one. Demamblez says, why do we hear so much about Florida man on news? Because of our sunshine laws. We have a law called our sunshine laws. Those are transparency laws that require disclosure of a lot of government information, especially in our criminal justice system. That is why almost all Florida trials are televised, which is awesome, right? So you see a lot of it in TV because the trials are all going to be on TV, right? You get it in the news, and a lot of the newspaper outlets, other outlets have standing requests with the police to just forward all their police reports. So everything they get, everything they can send out, they just mass email out. They just do it automatically every single day. Up, here you go. So there's so much information on that, whereas other states will be holding their information and will not give out information on crimes because they're scared, because they don't want to be transparent. And they actually want to hide it. They want to change the narrative. They want to change maybe they want to hide the identity of somebody, right? Usually of the perpetrator for political purposes, right? Because they don't want it to look bad, right? So I think it's a good thing. I think Florida man is a W. I think Florida man is a huge W. Nicholas Atkins says the current CAT system only thinks a win. They should enhance the scale with secondary number of factors, including the speed of travel of the storm. I'm not a meteorologist, so I would need a meteorologist to debate that. But once again, if it's an objective criteria, I'm fine. I mean, as long as it's an objective criteria, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe wind speed isn't the only thing. Maybe it's wind speed plus storm surge, whatever. You can add other factors. And storm surge, by the way, guys, is the amount of increase in the water, right? So the water is going to come up and go beyond its normal, be surging up beyond its normal boundaries and level. And this is a huge problem because a lot of Florida, particularly the islands, are not much above sea level. So if you get the storm surging up a couple of feet, islands are underwater. It doesn't take much. It does not take much elevation increase to just totally submerge an island. So that's what happens with storm surge as well. So there can be other secondary factors that I think could be important as well. So that's well, let me play the rest of that. So obviously, yeah, I want to point that out. Let me just play this through. Obviously, one huge thing you need to worry about with power lines is if you go through and you see okay, cool. I'm gonna look up this. Somebody in the chat. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, yeah, I got you. Okay, so Tatsumi, I got your clip pulled up. I'll play it at the end. Okay, that's a cool clip. Sounds cool. Got it pulled up for the end. Thank you, brother, for 5. Says there's a clip called Vesper was stuck 30 hours in a bar due to a hurricane. It's a 4-minute clip. Vesper talking about his experience in a hurricane. Cool. I'll pull it up at the end. Thank you, brother. I got it. I found it pretty quick. So if you're out, make sure you stay away from water because any of those power lines, they can come down and touch water. I almost killed myself during Katrina that way. So what was happening was I was driving home and it was dark and there were a bunch of trees down because big trees will fall and you can't get around them. So I had to get out and see if my car, which was at that point a Saturn Ion, right? They don't even make those anymore. It's a Saturn Ion, this piece of shit car. Well, let me pull it up. Let me pull up I'll pull up the exact piece of shit car I had. Okay. So I'm out in a hurricane. Yes, here it is. This is my boy right here. It's my boy right here. Oh, wow. This brings back memories. So many memories. Okay. So I'm in this piece of shit, okay? Because I like visuals, right? I'm in this piece of shit. And me and this piece of shit over here are trying to navigate around these trees. And when you get out of your car to check if the tree is, there's a tree down and can you get around? Can you drive in someone's lawn to get around? Well, you got to watch for power lines because if a power line is in a puddle of water and you step in that puddle of water, your ass is dead immediately, right? Immediately. And so I was about to go check if I could get around this particular tree. My mom doesn't even know the story, I don't think. She's probably watching. Hey, Mom, I didn't die, okay? So I got out, and I'm about to walk. Giant puddle of water, super deep, and there's a crackling power line right next to it. Of course, I get back in my car, go a different direction, backtrack. Fucking nuts. Fucking nuts. It was great. It was a crazy, crazy adventure. I got home, though. I got home. Okay. Yeah, those were retired in the Obama administration. So that tells you how far back we're going. Cool. Sometimes you got to retreat, okay? Someone's got to go back to go forward. Also, shout out to everybody on my locals. Appreciate you guys. Also, I want to say thank you to chat. This is a little quick thank you, and then we'll continue with this, talking about the Waffle House Index. For those who don't know that, we're going to talk about the Waffle House Index. So I want to say thank you to chat for helping me set up the Ko-fi because somebody recommended that. So now you guys can go if you ever want to support me there, and I will put that it's in the description, but it's also in the chat here for a second. If you guys ever want to support me there, because I know a lot of people are asking, I don't want to pay PayPal, they're woke, and I don't want to pay this and that. Well, I set this up, so I've now got this set up over here. So thank you for that. Got the first person going over there to support me, so thank you very much for that. Appreciate that, guys. And next thing I'm going to get invest in, I put a little goal here, was an HD webcam. So someone suggested the Insta360 Link 2 for travel. So when I'm in Korea, that would be something I would want to use in Korea, right? It's a gimbaled webcam. So that's my next goal, is to get a gimbal webcam that's actually got pretty good audio. I'll still bring a microphone because I want to be sure my audio is good. But that's my next thing I'm going to invest in, and a capture card so I can use 2 PCs. So that's what I got there. So thank you for chat for helping me out. I'm sometimes a boomer and I scuff things, but thank you guys. I think Seraphim emailed me that. So yeah, thank you for the recommendation on the camera as well, the webcam as well. I use a Logitech Brio now, but it's getting kind of older, and upgrading it is necessary because I travel a lot. So having a really good travel cam is good. I can't always bring my full camera setup. It's not feasible. All right, so let's go with the Waffle House Index. So we've got the Waffle House Index. Now, some of you may not have heard of this if you're not a Southerner. Maybe you don't know what Waffle House is. Waffle House is like UFC, right? The best fights there, the best fights happen there. All the drama happens there, but you can't look away. You can't look away. very ubiquitous through the southern United States, Waffle House. And it is an informal, but it's actually more accurate than most other indexes in determining the effect of a storm and the likelihood scale of assistance required for disaster recovery. So green means the restaurant has little to no damage and full power. That's full menu. Yellow is limited menu. The restaurant is running out of food or has limited power. And red is Waffle House is closed. So if it is red, you are fucked. And Florida right now is red. It's red, right? So Florida got hit very difficult. Millions without power. A lot of damage. We're going to see like what it's going to be in the millions, right? Or may hit $1 billion, who knows, because cost inflation, etc. Of property damage. But we're in red right now of the Waffle House Index. This is a real thing. I'm not making this up. This is real. This is actually studied. Chaos Smash says Andrew holds a rope to keep the door closed. Eska Stelmer says there's no real reason for a new hurricane scale. We have scales for tornadoes, rainfall, and storm surges. All of these can happen independently of each other. Just pay attention to your alerts. Okay, fair enough. I mean, look, if people want to update the Saffir-Simpson scale, I'm not going to say that that'd be horrible. That'd be the worst thing in the world. Oh my God, don't. I'm not married to Saffir-Simpson, although I did grow up learning it. You know, I did grow up learning like the levels of damage. You know, cat 1 through 5. But thank you. Yeah, I see your point there. And then Winston says, hello, I have a non-legal, non-weather related question. How dare you? How dare you? I'm joking. I watch your streams whenever I can. Usual replay gang. I sent a DM on X. Weeb extremist. Okay, let me see. You sent me a DM. Okay, let me see. Okay. Will I have somebody on stream sometime? If you introduce them to me, let's see. I can try to message them and I'll look it up. Yeah, sure. Am I willing to consider having people on? Sure. If we have a mutual topic to talk about, sure. And I'm willing to take requests for people to be on stream, sure. But I have to find something we have mutually to talk about, and we have to have we have to kind of hit it off a little bit. But yeah, sure. OST San for 5 says vote to replace FEMA with Waffle House Storm Center. Seriously, because FEMA is about as useful as actually, sorry, it's less useful than the Waffle House Storm Center, especially for relief. Yeah, it is. There's a different rating for tornadoes. Let me pull up the tornado scale here real quick. Okay, tornado rating scale. Okay, so it's the EF scale from 0 to 5. From 0 to 5. So there's a new scale too that actually just came out. I guess there's the I'm now once again, I'm more familiar with hurricane scale than the tornado scale, because obviously I'm from hurricane country. But here's the original F scale and the enhanced F scale. So F0 is 45 to 78 mile an hour gusts. That's on the old one. Now it's EF0, so 65 to 85. I'm just going to read from the enhanced, right? 86 to 110, 111 to 135, 136 to 165, 166 to 200, and EF5 is over 200 mile an hour winds. That's crazy. It's fucking nuts. Right? The EF scale takes into account more variables, including building type, structures, and trees. For each indicator, there are 8 degrees of damage, ranging from visible damage to complete damage indicator. So the original F did not take that into account. I guess it just took into account like wind speed, pure wind speed. So cool. Tornadoes. Yes, tornadoes. But remember, what they're saying is tornadoes appear within hurricanes. So a hurricane could spawn an EF3 tornado. There's nothing stopping a hurricane from spawning tornadoes. I don't know how strong the particular tornadoes were there. I mean, there can be a lot of tornadoes. You know, they might be, even if they're F0, right? Those can still have damage, right? Here you go. The EF scale is damage, not wind scale, which is why huge tornadoes like the 2013 El Reno were only EF3, and they should have been EF5. They weren't good enough. Structures wrecked. There we go. There we go. Thanks, chat. And I know a lot of you chat is in tornado country. You know, my friend Ben, he's from Kansas. That's tornado country. All right. So let's get into some of the laws, shall we? All right. We're going to just get into some of the relevant laws here. And that is at South Florida's building code and talking about that. So one thing that people don't know is that South Florida got absolutely, or they forget that we got flattened in the 90s. Now, this is a 2-hour documentary. I'm just going to play like 2 minutes of it. But I want to show you, first of all, number one, how base the 90s were, because like I just love seeing 90s stuff. I have such nostalgia for it because it's such a simpler yet like wholesome and like fun time. We didn't have all this bullshit. 90s was kind of awesome. Oh, real quick, Mexican Iron Man says, I've implemented the base legal mindset prep plan, which is a team of smoking hot blonde and Puerto Rican girls to assist me with pool cleaning by day and pitching my tent by night. Hey. Make sure you're not too thirsty because you'll be drinking all that water. Stay quenched, Iron Man. Stay quenched. Good job. Thank you so much, Mike. Very based. Stay safe there in South Carolina, brother. Zin for 25 said the interesting part of the EF scale is that it's measurable from the actual damage done, not radar detected wind speed. There hasn't been an official EF5 in over a decade, although many unofficial. Interesting. I did not know that. I haven't been one in a decade. Wow. And Ezreal with 5 legal mindset memberships. Thank you so much. Yes. Please report and say thank you if you got one of these, in the chat. Just report out. Say, hey, I got one of these gifts. Thank you so much, Ezreal. Thank you so much, JP. Thank you so much. And whoever you got it from, or if it's just being gifted, a lot of gifts out there, to say thank you in general for the gift. Appreciate that. And then Mexican Iron Man right there. Guys, thank you, Mexican DEI Iron Man. I'm joking. He's definitely... Mike is more qualified than I am at most things. So please do say thank you to Mexican Iron Man. He's absolutely such a good friend and such a good guy. Very based, good coverage. And he's behind the scenes on so many shows. It's insane. This guy is like the hardest working YouTuber that swears he isn't a YouTuber, because then he'll have to join the cool kids table, right? He'll have to pick a seat at the cool kids table. But thank you that for Mexican Iron Man and Ezreal as well. Thank you for that. Richard Gruber says, border of the 813727 in Pinellas reported surviving total Tampa death. Oof. Well, I'm glad you're all right. Glad you're all right, Richard. Let me actually see, like, in the chat, how many have you experienced a hurricane? I want to know, just experience, like, maybe you weren't in the center, right? You don't have to be in the eye of the storm, but I just want to know, how many of you chat have experienced a hurricane? And then Fandagori said Milton wasn't as bad as the media portrayed it. They led us to believe Tampa will be wiped off the map. It was by no means the worst hurricane in 100 years. Well, the thing is, if it was the same strength as it was at its peak, but it wasn't. And that's the thing about people forget about Katrina. Katrina was a category 1 when it hit Miami, a category 1, right? So we're like, oh, lol, category 1. Okay, cool. School gets canceled. I'm happy. Work gets canceled. I'm happy. Other than that, nobody gives a shit. We went to the movie theater later that day. Like the next day, I went to the movie, right? They're back open. Everything is back open again. And the few places that lost power had generators, right? It was nothing. But then a couple of days later, New Orleans is wiped off the map, right? And that's how quickly these things can change with hurricanes. That's why you do kind of have to track it and follow it. But once you get that information, you see where it's going and whether it's increasing or decreasing in strength, you can kind of get the expected severity. And we're going to get into that with the maps and the wind speed expectations, because Tampa actually doesn't have as high of a wind speed expectation as you would think. So this is Hurricane Andrew, okay? So this is my namesake hurricane And this is a documentary on what happened when a category 5, which is Milton's Peak, hits. And look at the amount of property damage. And yes, this was considered a super high quality camera back in the day. Understand, they're filming with the best camera that was available at the time, which is not even like my camera right now on its worst setting would not film in this quality, right? But just remember.
Buddy McKay on board the helicopter with us. Also, Linda Shelley from she's the head of the emergency operations department. We're going to look to show you some of the devastation down here at the Dayland Trailer Park. You can pause.
Flattened. That's just like sticks. Although you'll occasionally get a random structure that just happened to stick around, right? Like one structure that just held out there. But even, you get others where like it's half destroyed, but mostly just flattened.
Talk with both Buddy McKay and Linda Shelley and ask them questions.
Like it got bombed.
Mr. McKay, I saw the wide shot, the wide view just before our photographer Rob Pierce zoomed in on some of the tops of some of these buildings. What is your initial reaction? When I saw that, I gasped.
Well, we've been gasping also. This is incredible. It has just flattened this area. I had seen the other surrounding areas, and clearly there's been a lot of damage, but this can only be described as total devastation.
President Bush, as we have made an announcement earlier, is going to be arriving.
By the way, I know what you're thinking when they say President Bush. You're thinking W, right? No, that's cute. No, this is Poppy Bush. This is not even. This is the OG Bush. This is not W.
I think sometime around 5 o'clock this afternoon at Opelika Airport. What is the governor going to tell President Bush?
Well, I think all President Bush has got to do is take a look at this. Nobody will have to tell him anything. This is absolute devastation. If they're going to declare any place in America a disaster, it would have to be this one. There are concrete telephone poles lying on the ground, and there's just nothing but little bitty fragments of what used to be mobile homes.
Okay, Rob.
So this is why they don't allow, and I'm going to pull that down for a second. You can see that. This is why they do not allow mobile homes. I'll play this, I'll play it in the background a little bit because you guys can see it. But this is exactly why they don't allow mobile homes anymore in South Florida at all, really. Like new construction, you're not coming in there with a mobile home. Right now, North Florida is different, right? Outside of Miami-Dade County, right? We got counties in the U.S., in states within states that can have different rules. But in that area, they're like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore because, that's a death trap. That's a fucking death trap. This is all wrecked. This whole area wrecked, completely wiped off the map. Right? It's basically, in South Florida, a mobile home is a coffin if you're in it during a hurricane. It really is. And a lot of people died in those mobile homes. Right? Really crazy. So let's see. Yeah. And now, of course, some of the structures. So one of the things is some of the structures that are allowed, the one thing that can happen, and this is with law, let me explain this because we're going to get in the building code. The building code applies in the revised building code. It applied to new structures. So if the structure is existing or pre-existing or was pre-built before that, right? That's something that will be allowed to continue to exist without having to update. So a lot of times people will say, well, okay, if they update our hurricane code, do I have to knock down my house? No, you don't. Although you might want to consider it. You might want to consider what improvements you might want to make, right? Because maybe there's a good idea to make some upgrades, right? But you don't have to knock down your entire house. You get what's called grandfathered in, right? You get grandfathered in. So you've been in something for a while, right? Especially before the updates were made. Then, you have to do that. I'm from Europe. I don't know why you make houses with wood and paper. Well, like I said, certain places, like I think under the South Florida building code, prior to this, that's not happening as much, right? But in other places, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for it. Number one, it's cheaper, it's quicker. If it gets destroyed, you can rebuild it for cheaper, right? A lot more customization, right? Yeah, it's why we build EU with bricks. Bricks can get blown over by a hurricane too. Trust me. Trust me. I've seen brick buildings that aren't constructed well go. Let's see. But if it's concrete with rebar, that'll do pretty well. Right? Ezreal said, having lost my apartment to a fire before, I can empathize with people losing home. Yeah, and once again, I have empathy for all that. I don't like the where we get to blaming folks beyond the fact that you should try to get yourself out of there. I will say there was that one guy, I think his name was Lieutenant Dan. He was hanging out in a boat in Tampa Bay. That is negligent, or wanton disregard for your own health. However, your home, it has an emotional quantity to it. And a lot of folks just have that attachment and say, no, this is my house. I'm going to stick it out, right? This is where I live. I'm staying here. I'm going to be like the badger, right? And I'm going to just stay here rather than to get out of the zone, right? I understand that point of view. I tend to get out of the way, but that's my thing. Fandangor. So what is the legal status of evacuees that went to Miami-Dade and now don't have a home to come back? There's a lot of people that don't have a home to begin with that are now there in Miami. Well, once again, they're not refugees, because once again, the United States, as a resident citizen of the US, whatever, you can stay wherever you want to stay. And there are shelters that are meant to accommodate people for certain periods of time, right? So generally, people who've lost their homes might be grouped into a single shelter or be consolidated, right? And then they'd have to figure out what they're going to do. If they're going to get some sort of assistance, if they're going to have insurance money, right? Are they somebody who's going to eventually be able to get help? Are they going to go stay with family? Are they going to stay with friends, right? So that's what they would go through with that process. If they're just somebody that was there that perhaps was from a lower socioeconomic scale, or maybe they were poverty-stricken or homeless, right? Well, then they might end up in the homeless shelter in Miami, right? That's actually what happened with Katrina in Houston, actually. A lot of folks from Katrina ended up in Houston and just ended up in Houston because they didn't have the means to go back to reconstruct or rebuild. So a lot of that goes on with that. Lieutenant Dan, he got branded that. Yeah, because he got a pair of new legs. He did that. Yeah. So what happened to those people in the 90s? Well, the ones that survived are the ones that died. Right. I mean, obviously the ones that died, but the ones that survived and their homes were flattened. The problem was back then, there were a lot of problems. One problem was insurance. So a lot of the insurance companies went insolvent. They didn't have enough money to pay out, right? They just couldn't. Or they said, hey, we're not covering this, right? They said, oh, no, it's outside the scope of our coverage, which was a huge issue. There were a lot of fights over that, right, over insurance money. There was some federal relief for those folks. There's people that if you had a damaged house, for a while, it was very famous. There are these blue tarps they put over their roofs because they'd have a hole in their roof. So you'd see blue tarps. So you'd drive into the city of Miami and you saw blue tarps for sometimes years, right? Where they I'd see blue tarps up until they could get those fixed. So it really depended on, do you have money? What happened? Where were you? Some people got relocated and never came back, right? The FEMA tarps. You guys know those. Yeah, the FEMA tarps. Yeah. Insurance. Yeah, insurance. Oh, man. If insurance can fuck you, it'll fuck you, right? Which is why I say don't always count on insurance. Be very, very, very careful with insurance. All right. So they changed their building code. So now South Florida's building code is pretty strong, right? But North Florida is the kind of weaker one. And that's because the codes come originally from South Florida. South Florida, because of Hurricane Andrew, is kind of the origin of those codes in Miami first and then in Broward County. And you can actually find those incorporated now into what's called the Florida Building Code. So we now in Florida have a uniform law that regulates, or regulation rather, but it's a form of law that regulates how buildings are built. and this is the 2010. So this would be after 2010. So if I know a lot of people will say, oh, I'm in a building that was built after XYZ. Well, unless it's after 2010, it won't have this update. This is the latest update. So they looked at wind speed maps and they changed the tolerances, right? So looking at the maps, they looked here and they said, okay, the ultimate design wind speed, right, is 180 or 170 in like southern Florida, right? And then going up, as you go further up, let me actually zoom in here a little bit. You'll be able to see this a little better. All right, so 180 down here in the Keys, a little bit further south, 170 as you go up, 160, getting into Palm Beach. And the Tampa Bay area, that's in either the 150 or the 140 zone, right? Kind of 150, 140 zone. And that's supposed to be the 100-year storm, right? Like once in 100 years, they'll get a storm that strong. So we had a storm that was what, according to the records, something about what, 120, even if it was 130, even if it was 130, that's below the threshold here. So that is where all new homes should be able to sustain that. Now, here's the problem. Are all homes new? No. But in sort of a Darwinian way, how the building code will work is this. And this is kind of fucked up, but this is how it works in practical reality. And once again, this is a legal mindset. This is not feelings mindset. So while I'm very empathetic, at the end of the day, I'm also...
Look, here's the thing.
Fine. Listen,
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
So I'll just say how it works in practical reality is if your home is not capable of withstanding this, it's going to get destroyed. And then when it's rebuilt, it's going to have to meet these building criteria. So, you know, if you're like, okay, I don't want to upgrade my home. It's an old home. It's a historic home, whatever. That's fine. But then when it's destroyed in a hurricane, it's like, oh, well, now you do, right? If you're building an addition, right? Let's say you're building a separate wing or a mother-in-law suite or whatever. You're building a Baldo bunker, right? If you're Nick Rekieta. That's got to be up to hurricane standards, right? You can't have an add-on that doesn't fit those standards because it's a new construction, right? Unless it's just a minor modification. But once again, now we're getting into like bickering little details. Is it fixing something that exists or is it building something completely new? That's a good question. I think if storms get stronger in the future, will they need higher standards? But they're constantly assessing the levels. And frankly, they haven't needed like, honestly, here's the thing, Bob, for all this talk about climate change and hurricanes getting worse, honestly, the hurricanes were worse even in the past. And like, we're talking like way past. We're talking like pre-industrial. We had really bad hurricanes back in the 1880s, 1890s, near the turn of the century, right? 1920s, 1930s, 40s. There were some horrible, devastating hurricanes. So it's not like the bad hurricanes are just happening now. We just don't remember them. And because we have an extreme recency bias, we always want to think that we're currently at the worst state that it's ever been at. But we're probably not when it comes to climate events, right? And weather events like that. Not climate events, because once again, this isn't attributable to whatever the CO2 level is, blah, 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 right? We've had some bad hurricanes in the past, some real bad hurricanes in the past. And by the way, I know this as a Floridian who grew up with hurricanes. So I'm speaking of hurricanes. I can't speak to tornadoes like you Midwesterners can, but I studied the shit out of hurricanes. I was kind of a little bit of a hurricane otaku. Yeah, the Galveston hurricane. The Galveston hurricane was horrible, right? The Labor Day hurricane, the Long Island hurricane. A lot of these were horrible. One of them wrecked the French fleet, yeah, during the American Revolution. Seriously, that's not even a joke. And we're like, oh, it's so bad for us. Oh, because what? Greta Thunberg said so, right? Come on, man. MD for 1999 said you should really share that story from Hurricane Katrina. I did. I just did. I just did. That's my Katrina story. Driving, almost getting electrocuted. And after I was drinking Hypno, you guys know Hypnotic, the alcohol Hypnotic? One of my friends thought it was cool, so he was always drinking it. I don't know if you guys know that. I'll show it. It's the stupidest alcohol ever. But it's like it's blue. So they just liked it because it was blue. It was like the stuff that you enjoy and like when you're very young and very stupid. Yeah, this one. This one. This one. This was the stupidest thing ever, guys. Don't ever do this. So drinking Hypnotic during a Category 1 hurricane. I think we ordered pizza from I think Cazzola's. It's fun. Good times. So anyways, we got building codes that are revised. Building codes that are revised. And so now all new construction has to follow these. Now, there's talk that some of the factors have to change and that we might need to update some of the types of ways in which we construct for high velocity hurricane zones. That's HVHZ, which is specifically Miami-Dade and Broward County, which require right here, they require certain types of buildings to be standing up either to 165, 175, or 185 mile an hour winds. Right? Pretty huge. But how do you do that? Right? What technically will stand up to that? Because there's some comment that certain types of tile construction that we allow in Miami will not stand up to that. That it will not actually stand up to this. So there's talk about changing the requirements for this. So we'll see as that changes in the future. But once again, it'll only apply going forward, not going back. All right. Let's get these super chats, and we'll talk about declarations of emergency and FEMA. I know you guys love FEMA, right? They love FEMA. I'll play a funny clip from in a second. Big Leo said, so what I'm hearing is no more cardboard forts. No, cannot do it. Big Leo 3036 also became a member. Thank you so much, Big Leo. Appreciate you being a member of the Based Legal Mindset. Winston says, I don't understand why people have such nostalgia for the 90s. For me, peak civilization was 2006 to 2014 before politically correct nonsense. Everyone united in hating Bush Jr. Modern Warfare 2 lobbies, good times. Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. I actually think like that's very debatable. I mean, 2004 to 2008, I can say was pretty good. So I think we can get some overlap there. But when it starts to get towards the 10s, that's when you didn't notice it, but a lot of that PC stuff did come up, and a lot of the stuff when it got to the annoying part, the 10s were getting there a little bit. And political correctness was there in the 90s. It just wasn't as powerful. Like people are like, oh, that'll never be a thing, right? Yeah. People say they remember the 80s. It was fun. I mean, that once again, I guess it could be biased based on generation, right? Generational bias, maybe. I don't know. People were chill. People were very chill in the 90s. Though it's pretty good. The 80s was nothing but R and F slurs.
I'm not sorry, and I did nothing wrong.
Sorry, that's a really good description of the 80s. I'm sorry, that's pretty. I mean, I'm just gonna play this from.
Hello, Peso Department.
It kind of destroyed me. Okay, thank you. Zin said, if Milton had swung north of Tampa rather than south, it could have been significantly worse. The bay acting as a funnel could have driven the surge over 20 feet. Tampa Bay got very lucky with wind shear. Yeah, exactly. It's based on the way it would have come in, right? And there's ways in which, for Miami too, by the way, there's a certain path in Miami. If you look at Miami, there's a certain path. If a hurricane ever directly hit this, the city of Miami is fucked. It's the path that comes over Miami Beach, then goes kind of over the port, like over Government Cut, then into downtown Miami, then into Coral Gables, and into Kendall. That is like the tourist heart, the little economic business heart, and then like the residential heart of Miami. And it's like a straight shot line. And if a hurricane just ever straight shot that, it would be very damaging, very damaging. And a lot of older homes and stuff there too that may not be up to code. So yeah. We're gonna get into emergency management. Actually, I'll save this clip for later. Okay, so let's get into emergency management. So if you've got a hurricane, you've got to declare an emergency. So in order to do that, you have to make an emergency declaration, and you have to follow your state statutes to do that. Now, this was made by Ron DeSantis on Saturday, October 5th, I believe. There was a state of emergency declared. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because when there is a state of emergency, it triggers several laws that protect consumers and protect people. And that's why this is very important to declare ASAP. Also, for tax purposes, if you have damages or costs that are incurred during a state of emergency, right, there's certain deductions that are applicable for that, right? So that's very important to trigger that. Also, you become eligible for assistance from local, state, other resources that's only available when an emergency is declared. Now, are those resources going to go to individuals? Very fucking rarely, right? Now let's talk about FEMA, right? Let's talk about FEMA real quick. FEMA was created by President Carter, right, in 1979. After there was a executive order, right, which I do not like the fact that FEMA was created by executive order, because anything created by executive order can be immediately gotten rid of by executive order. It's weird. There was a 1803 federal disaster relief legislation, right? That's the first instance. And then there was a Stafford Act in 88, which was renamed the Disaster Relief Act, or just the Stafford Act. And that provides clear direction for emergency management and established the statutory framework for disaster response and recovery through presidential disaster declarations. Now, what type of assistance are they offering? Well, most of the assistance, which people don't know, actually doesn't go to individuals. It goes to governments from FEMA. That's from our federal government, right? So this is actually the majority, the bulk for hurricanes of what they're getting. And I've worked with cities and local governments, so I have really intimate knowledge of this. But especially what's called public assistance is really debris removal assistance, right? So when you go and spend all this money to remove debris, the federal government will reimburse a percentage of it. They will reimburse 75% of it. So they give governments, right? Governments money at a reimbursement level. But what this does is it typically requires you to do the work first, and then they reimburse you later. So it's not like they're just giving them cash. They're actually requiring you to come with receipts, submit your receipts, and then they're paying you back. It's not the assistance that you'd think we get, right? You think America, most powerful country in the world, immediate cash injection in that area, right? No, that's not it at all. That's not it at all. It's a reimbursement. It's a reimbursement. And let's look at individual assistance, right? IA, what they call IA. Individuals and household programs is the only form of IA that is authorized. Authorization of IHP under an emergency is rare. Housing is 100% federal, while other needs require a 25% non-federal. So if there's housing, they'll do that 100%. But otherwise, you're going to need to chip in for other costs of food, etc., transportation. And it's rare, extremely rare that they'll lift a finger for you. So North Carolinians, right, don't feel like you were targeted. It's rare in general for it to be activated. Right? Now, it was extremely negligent with the IA, and there's other parts involving the military assistance, involving stopping people from assisting, that was, I think, criminal. But don't wait for FEMA to give you individual help like housing or money, etc. How come Ukraine is getting money from them? That's a good question. Because we are giving Ukraine money at a federal level directly to their government or in the form of military aid. And we've been authorizing that with both parties of our government, which supposedly represent us, have been authorizing that for almost a decade now. Right? It's pretty bad. It's 4 years. Sorry, 4 years. But it's dumb. It's really dumb. Right? I'm not a fan of that much money to go to Ukraine when we have these severe problems here. And once again, maybe our aid to individuals shouldn't be rare. But that's an opinion. Once again, it's not the law. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But that is the law as it stands on the federal level. So you need that in state of emergency. It also triggers price gouging laws. And I'm going to read the statute for price gouging so you guys understand that, because I think this is very important. And for those that survive the hurricane and get past it, which hopefully is everybody, right? I hope everybody survives, everybody's safe, everybody's fine. But price gouging is something you should be aware of and you should report. So we're going to go through the statute, the Florida statute 501, about this, about price gouging right here, and read it and what is price gouging. But before we do that, I saw this funny clip, and it's kind of related to one of the last topics I covered, so I kind of have to play it. So just bear with me. This is my good friend Jeremy. Geeks and
Holly Carp says, I'll mud wrestle with you, Jeremy. Holly Carp, I am not going to pull a Nick Rekieta and start thinking you're some attractive chick just because that's your profile picture. So I'm going to respectfully decline, but I appreciate the offer.
There are no women on the internet, guys. Also, hashtag 199. What's up, Jeremy? That's a good clip. Good clip. All right. Oh, also, I want to give you guys a little live map update on where Milton is. No women on the internet. All right. So there's a little live map update before we get to the price gouging statute. Here is the Milton. The Milton is offshore, right? And moving more offshore. And we've got the projected track is out to sea. Now it can always circle back, but right now it's out to sea. So that is the path of Milton. All right. This was yeah, that's a good comment. This was not the worst case scenario. It could have been worse than what we had here. All right. Let's talk about price gouging. After I get the super chat, Market Reality said when Milton was out in the Gulf, it was a monster. I saw reports of it had 200-mile-an-hour gusts. they need to look for an opening in Cat 6 designation. Tampa also had a shallow shelf. But the thing is, here's the problem, and I'm going to be real with you. If you know about hurricanes, they're never going to make landfall at that speed. In order to get that power, they've really got to be out at sea. Maybe they'll make landfall on some small island that way, but they can't come, over 200 miles an hour, or if at 200 miles an hour. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they need Cat 6. It'd be so rare it'd be used like once. And here's the other thing about that too, and I'm going to give you the reality. They would use it as a political point because it's 2024. I don't want it because it'd be politicized. Because we're in the year 2024 and everything is politicized. Fucking hurricanes would be politicized. They'd be like, hurricanes are getting so strong, we need a category 6. No, we don't. Also, we now would need to revise the old hurricanes that were pre this change to see if they were category 6. And some of them we don't have accurate data on. Right? So let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's keep Cat 6 for Ethernet cables. I don't want it to be politicized. And I know it would be. Tampa has a shallow shelf off its coast, exactly, so it can't draw that water that would really power it up. Yeah, Bob says it's been nonstop, Andrew, to turn off the news. Yeah, exactly. And I don't. It's just I'm glad I'm in Asia sometimes because I don't hear it I hear it only online. And so when I want to turn off politics, I just turn off my computer and I go outside. And I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? And I just hang out and talk to my friends and stuff. Mark, don't got that one. Thank you. So I'm caught up. And let me check locals. I appreciate you there. Veggie Han said, wait, Andrew was in Florida for Andrew? Yes. I indeed was. Oh yeah, and let me give a little public shout out. I know I'm working on the stream alerts, but thank you to Hobbs for being the first donator on my Ko-fi. So thank you for that first Ko-fi donation. Thank you so much. All right, let's get into the statute for gouging. Here it is, 501-160. The rental and sale of essential commodities during a declared state of emergency. So once again, we're building upon law here. So state of emergency is required. It's got to be declared by the governor. Oh, and somebody asked, are my family okay? Yes, my people are okay. My friends are okay. Everybody that I know is okay. I haven't heard one person that has had major issues that I know of that has contacted me. Like it could be, now, could I hear from an acquaintance or something? Sure, but I haven't yet. Rental or sale of essential commodities. So it's essential commodities. It's not everything. So it's not luxury goods. It's not gator boots in your Gucci belt. It's essential commodities. What is in a commodity? It defines a commodity. A commodity is a good, service, material, merchandise, supply, equipment, resource, or other article of commerce without limitation: water, food, ice, chemicals, petroleum, gas, lumber, necessary for consumption and use as a result of the emergency. So any of this stuff that you could use for emergencies. Right? It is prima facie evidence that that a price is unconscionable if the amount charged represents a gross disparity between the price of a commodity or the rental or lease of any dwelling unit or self-storage facility that is subject to an offer or transaction, and the average price at which the commodity or dwelling unit or storage facility was rented, leased, sold, or offered for rent or sale in the usual course of business during 30 days immediately prior to the declaration of state of emergency, unless the increase is attributable to additional costs incurred in connection with the rental sale of the commodity or rental or lease of a dwelling unit or regional, national, international market trends. Which means, look, unless there was a reason for it to increase over 30 days, unless there was a reason for the price to go up, you cannot have a gross disparity. And that's prima facie evidence of a price being unconscionable. So unconscionability, you hear that in contracts too, is the standard. So if there's a big difference in the price before and after, nope. And then the second standard is if it grossly exceeds the average price it was sold 30 days prior. So if you go online, you look at what it was 30 days ago. Don't use the Wayback Machine because they just got owned, right? The Wayback Machine just got owned, which Internet Archive is a little crazy. So, oh, by the way, someone asked, is this consumables or property? It's both. It's both. It's both food, water, and housing and storage units. So anything that is that whether it's property or whether it is a rental of a unit, right, dwelling unit or store or self-storage. So it's both. It's actually good. But if that average is exceeded, that's prima facie unconscionable, and it is illegal upon that declaration to rent or sell at an unconscionable price within the area for which a state of emergency, which is the whole state. So you cannot sell any essential commodity, not limited to supplies, services, provisions, and equipment that is necessary for consumption as a result of the emergency, or any dwelling unit or self-storage that is necessary for habitation. This is almost all, by the way. So any hotel is going to fall under that. Airbnb. I know Airbnb likes to think, oh, we're cool, we're Airbnb. People are hip to Airbnb now. They know what Airbnb is. So it's not like back in the day when nobody knew what it is and like everybody's a bunch of boomers. Everybody knows about Airbnb now. So if you have your Airbnb marked up at 10x, yeah, you could be liable here. That's a dwelling, right? That arguably is necessary for habitation during the hurricane. And that is effective not to exceed 60 days after the initial declaration. So it was declared on the 5th. So anything from October 5th would have been a crime. Any violation may be enforced by the Office of the State Attorney or Department of Legal Affairs. Obviously, reported to your local law enforcement. It does not create a private cause of action, so you can't sue them independently. You have to report it to the police, report it to law enforcement. Right? It's not something you bring up yourself. And it also doesn't impact the government, right? So the government can increase their prices, but you can't. And it doesn't impact charities. So it doesn't apply to churches, charities, education, and social organizations. Doesn't apply to them. Right? Oh, sorry. That's the part. This is a different section. This section is the part you have to actually give a receipt, but that doesn't apply to religious, charitable, fraternal, civic, educational, or social. So you have to give a receipt. And the reason why is because these are tax exempt organizations. So you're not requiring tax exempt organizations to necessarily give a business tax receipt. So you're required to do that. There you go. So that is the anti-gouging laws. So don't get gouged, guys. If you see somebody charging $100 for water, $600 for water, please report that like ASAP. It's illegal as fuck. Illegal. Let me make sure I got everything. Thank you. Nostradamus says, Andrew, how about stick the lawyering and leave the weather analysis to Bob Iger? I do love Bob Iger. We got to do a Star Wars show pretty soon. But the law regarding hurricanes is very interesting. And there's more finer detail to this. Obviously, the building code is very detailed, but I don't know how many engineers are out there want to get down in the nitty-gritty of that. But it is very interesting that these laws are being developed. And I think there will be more laws that come out of natural disasters, what happens after them, and also in terms of what we do with our local resources. Because I think we should allow more resources to be directed to helping people in cases of emergency, right? The problem is that a lot of times these programs are abused to declare emergencies when there isn't an actual emergency. And one thing that I think is really disturbing is when people talk about declaring emergencies for things that like aren't really an emergency, or they're not a weather-related emergency or an act of God-related emergency, and then using funds from that for other purposes. So you might say, well, we have a social inequality emergency, or we have a diet emergency, or we have a cholesterol emergency, or we have whatever others emergency, or COVID emergency even, right? That should fall under a different parameter than an act of God related emergency, right? Or for example, using emergency funds, right, which should be earmarked for these sort of what we call acts of God, right? Hurricanes, tornadoes, etc., and taking that and reappropriating for other things like relocation of migrants, right? Which should be dealt with separately, completely, and funded separately and not lumped together, right? Or riots. Yeah, riots is another good example, right? Shouldn't be used to accommodate for riots or whatever else, protests. And I think that's one of the problems we see with a lot of laws regarding emergency, right? Because it'll be abused. What about the government telling landlords they can evict someone during COVID? That I think was a overreach. And I believe the courts have looked back at that and said, yeah, that's not really a thing, right? And I remember during COVID, I said that was illegal, right? And everyone's like, well, no, we can do whatever we want. And then we had the case of the Supreme Court, and it turns out, no, actually, there's limits to your emergency power mandate. It's got to be within the scope of what is anticipated. And when people were anticipating disaster relief, when they passed these acts, they were doing them because of weather events. They weren't doing them because of social justice or because of riots or whatever else. If they want to pass something related to social justice or, political, rallies or whatever else, that should be something dealt with separately in the law, right? Let's see. So 62% of you have not experienced a hurricane, but 38% of you have. So there you go. There you go. Okay. So we've got this clip that was submitted. So let's watch that. 3 minutes. I'm going to play it at 1.25 speed. Okay. Play this at 1.25 speed. Let's get this one. So this is from a super chat earlier. Vesper was stuck 60 hours in a bar to a hurricane. Thank you for that. Thank you for your clip suggestions, guys. I always love them.
That's my very first week in the U.S. for college. There was a hurricane or tornado alert, and everyone went home or something. And all I could think of, where do I go? What do I do when the wind is trying to kill me? I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about a time that I'm going to do it because I think it's a funny story. In my college years, the place where I was living got hit with a hurricane. It got hit by a hurricane, and I had roommates, and they were freaking out. They stocked up on supplies. They were like hunkered down. They were expecting the power to go out. All that stuff, right? They were just like hunkered down in our little apartment, and they were like ready to go like the distance, right? The hurricane came. It was actually pretty bad. It was like actually pretty scary. And then the exact location of where we lived fell into the eye of the hurricane. Do you know what that is? It's like a period of calm where there's like nothing there. There's like a period of calm where there's nothing there. And then we were like, is it over? And then one of my roommates was like, no, this is just the eye of the storm. This is about the halfway point. It's gonna get crazy again. This is about the halfway point. This is where you're gonna realize that I'm actually more similar to Axel than you think I am. Yeah, that's what I said. The eye of the storm, man. The eye of the storm. You got to be careful. That's the halfway point, and it gets worse. It only gets worse. I think it's just like a bunch of hard years that have made me a little bit wiser. But this is where you're gonna realize that like I'm actually closer to Axel than you think I am. When I was younger, I put on my shoes. I put on a jacket. I left my apartment and I went to the local bar. And I sat down at the bar, and there was like, oh no, that is crazy. That's fucking crazy, actually. Shit. Going to a bar in the eye of the storm. Oh no. Like it was usually like bumping. There's usually like a lot of people at the bar, but there's only like, including the workers, including the staff, about 6 people there. So I went to the bar, and then I had a pint. Having a good chat with the other people there, having a good chat with the bartender who I was like pretty close friends with. We were just drinking and having a good time. And then the hurricane hit again. And I was stuck in that bar for the rest of the... Well, yeah, there you go. There you go. For about 30 hours, I was stuck at the bar, like I couldn't go back home. 30 hours? Anyways, it was cool. It was fine. They had food. Like the bartender was really cool. Like we just hunkered down, and I was not in danger. It was fine. We were just like hanging out and whatever, right? And then I went back home after the storm ended. I went back home, and my roommates were so angry at me. I like to think that I'm a pretty good roommate. I'm not too loud. I don't eat your food if it's not. I don't eat food that's not mine. I always do my dishes immediately afterwards. I'm not too loud. I'm a pretty good roommate. I clean the bathroom more than I should.
That's
I'm
good.
Like, you know, kind of a neat freak. I like to think that I'm a pretty good roommate. They never really complained about me. That was the one time where they were just so mad at me. I thought they were gonna punch me. Like both of them were yelling at me.
Yeah.
Like I thought I was gonna get like punched by both of them. Like they were so mad. They were like, what the F were you thinking? We thought you died. We thought we were gonna have to like call the cops and then call your parents and tell them that you're dead. You walked into a hurricane and then you died. What were you thinking? They were so mad.
That's about right. That's about right. That's exactly what you do in the eye of a hurricane. You get fucked because you're stuck there, right? Because like you're gonna come out, it's gonna be the worst ever, right? Very interesting. I wonder if that was Katrina. Might have been Katrina, right? But yeah, you'll think it's I'm gonna go about my day. Looks fine, right? I'm gonna come out there and do that. So yeah, no, definitely, yeah. Miss Vesper for sure. Good content there. Good story. LJ O'Rourke says this is why you drink at home. Indeed. And Mazrova Palma dropping the 10, and then LJ O'Rourke with 5, Walking Corpse for 5. Thank you, Mazrova Palma. Thank you, Walking Corpse, LJ O'Rourke. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Very, very gigabase to you guys.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I like to see. Oh yeah.
Guys, say thank you to Mazrova, LJ, and Walking Corpse. Are great supporters and great supporters of the channel. So thank you. People ask how I'm doing today. I'm doing very good. I feel a little bit of like a sore throat, so I'm afraid that tomorrow I may have to take a little break from talking because my throat's hurting a little bit. So we'll see if I take a rest day tomorrow. That may or may not happen. If it does, I'll probably keep a shorter stream, and that's why I'm trying to keep my streams a little bit shorter. That 3-hour, that almost 4-hour stream, put some wear on you. But thank you for everybody for supporting me. I really appreciate everybody who's come through, and I will have a lot of clips coming out. A lot of the older shows that have multiple topics, have clips that are going to be coming out over the next day or 2 days. So you'll see those coming very, very shortly. Make sure to smash the like button, and I will catch you on the next one. Until then, make sure you're one that is educated and not one of those that is currently.
You are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing. Yes, you're coping